in my opinion, design is fundamental to what we do in our industry. So I think an event strategist, again, my opinion, this is part and parcel of what we do each and every day. I think the old model was a little bit of, and I think a lot of people say, I've always designed, but what we're now saying, at least in our vernacular, is that we have a framework and a methodology, our 8 phases of the event experience, is that what and how we bring design to life with intention. So I think my experience is you maybe designed the registration experience, you maybe designed the opening reception, the general session as all individual components, but they perhaps were not part of a greater blueprint of that event and how they bring the overall goals, objectives, and measurement to life of why these events are being invested in. And they are an investment, whether it's an association, corporation, incentive trip, a trade show, a conference. These are investments that are being made to drive some sort of business result forward. So I think it's how an event strategist brings that investment to life is why getting involved and learning and becoming part of experience design or having that become part of their work is really critical, because that to me is what they do. It's the essence of their job. And I think it elevates their strategic value within the organization. It allows them to drive a better ROI to their own, whether it's their boss, their board, their organization. I think it elevates the entire role of an event strategist. So I think design is sort of the foundation building block that I would encourage everyone to get involved in. Our own organization, I think, is the perfect example of that. And I go back many we's, right? So I was with Confron that then became Experian. We started working with Jim Gilmore in 1999. We rebranded to Experian. That name was not chosen by a dartboard, right? It was about the event experience. But as I've said, I don't think we took it to the next level, right? We talked about it, we worked with Jim Gilmore, but there was never really the methodology or the framework that had been embedded into the organization. I think in 2011, when I joined Merritt's, and then shortly thereafter we were able to acquire Experian, all that sort of came together, I think, into sort of a perfect storm. And if you go back to those early days, we had the Merritt's Institute, which was established by Steve Merritt's around the deep understanding of neuroscience and how that understanding would impact meetings, events, and the various businesses that he owns. We then brought in Jim Gilmore, who is the best experience designer in the world, and combined it with our own Greg Bogue, who was this sort of creative genius that at that point was floating around and didn't have really the right landing spot in the organization. It's the old seat on the bus. He was not in the right seat. And so that sort of perfect storm of the Merritt's Institute, along with Jim Gilmore, along with Greg Bogue, really gave us the opportunity to then truly create a framework and a methodology. So our own work and our experience in sort of walking our own walk and talking our own talk, I think is what's made it effective in the industry. Because we're not just chatting about it, right? We're trying to live into it each and every day. Perfect example is our strategic event team does a design lab in every destination we go with all of our partners, whether it's the DMC, it's the Bureau, it's the convention center, whoever's involved, and they go through a design lab to create the experience that we're going to, with intent, design and execute during our own events. So we eat our own cooking. That gives us the authority and the ability then to go out and talk with confidence with our clients and show them exactly how this comes to life. And I think that's part of the magic. So a design lab is something that we utilize within our organization to bring our experience design practice to life. It is our client-facing experience where we get all the right stakeholders in a room. We spend anywhere from a day to a day and a half going through our design methodology that Merritt's Global Events has created, which, to me, I like this assembly line analogy where you put a widget on one end, it goes to the assembly line, it comes out completely transformed. That's what a design lab means to us. And so it is how we bring our practice to life and how we interact with our clients and their key stakeholders around the revisioning and the redesigning of their, whether it's a single event or a portfolio of events. To me, my favorite quote is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So to me, that is the essence of being a change agent, is looking at an environment. I think the kiss of death is cut and paste, or the kiss of death is that's the way we've always done it, right? So we have to constantly challenge ourselves to look at things through a new lens, to repurpose, to refilter, whatever the phrase you want to use of the day is, but to revision what we're trying to do each and every time. That's why we do a design lab for every single strategic event we do within Merit's Global Events, right? We're not in carbon paper and just they're going to do the same thing next year. So I think that to me is really what a change agent is all about. I think an event strategist, to be relevant, has got to get on the bus, right? This is the space that we live in. We are in a design space, not only in our industry, but across the world, right? Everything is around design. Will it last? Design is always going to be a part of everything. Will it be the focus it is today? Probably not. It'll probably move to the next sort of paradigm, if you will, of focus. But what we do is around design. What we do is around the execution of that design and the impact that has on the individuals that we touch with every event that we engage in, whether it's a trade show, an incentive trip, a meeting, a conference, a board meeting, the day meeting, whatever it is, we have the ability to impact that through design. So I think an event strategist, if you're not on board, if you're not reading and learning, you're going to get left behind. And that is where your relevance comes in. And that's where the quote-unquote seat at the table is going to come with event strategists that are learning, challenging themselves, and pushing themselves to constantly grow and evolve. So if 10 years down the road, if I'm looking at sort of the industry as a whole, I think the event strategist term is part and parcel. It's probably, maybe in today's term, it's a meeting planner or meeting professional. I think it's the elevated role, it's the strategic relevance of that role that has changed. I think they are viewed just like a CMO or a COO or a CSO in an organization, whether it's an executive director or a corporation or an executive director in an association, that they're at that level, that they are seen as being critically important to the success of the organization, to fulfilling the goals and objectives of that organization, and that they truly do have a seat at the table. I think that's our overall goal as an industry, is to elevate the role, because it is so important and has such dramatic economic impact on the organizations that these event strategists work for. That is our obligation, hopefully, to continue that elevation of the role, and they truly do have a seat at the table. The industry is, and this is going to sound really trite, it's in a constant state of change and flux. Every year, and I'm a veteran, right? Every year you think, okay, it can't get any crazier, and yet there it goes, and it gets crazier, whether it's safety and security, whether it's the commission model, whether it's the financial relevance of hotels, whether it's the future of convention and visitors bureaus and their relevance. Constant state of change. So, if you can't handle change, this is not the right industry for you. You got to embrace it, you got to grow with it, you got to constantly learn and get educated. But I think crystal ball, it's going to be a wild ride.